What is going on, everybody, and welcome back into Byerly Studios. Now, today in the studio is an exciting video. Now, this is the very first video that I'm releasing in the Fairy Garden collection here on my YouTube channel. In this video, me and my daughter are going to begin the processes of sculpting, casting, as well as painting an awesome fairy door. Now, some backstory. Originally, this idea came to fruition because my daughter wanted a fairy door to hang on the door of her room so that she could put her teeth in it for the tooth fairy to collect. What a great idea. Now, originally I had sculpted it in a one-stage process, but later on I decided to pick it up and I kind of adapted it and changed it in different ways. The first half of this video is that first design session, and then after the first half you'll see me sculpting it and removing it and changing it into different ways. One of the most noticeable things that you'll see me change throughout the process is I will go from a, say, kind of a flower roof into more so of a mushroom roof. And instead of having a small overhang of wood going over the top of the door handle, as it were, we're going to actually install a hook at the top that it can be hung, or it can be attached magnetically, or even with command strips, which I recommend. That way the door can be removed completely without any kind of destruction to the actual casted door or to the actual door to the room itself. It's just really fun designing these things from scratch, sculpting them, casting them, and painting them. We also get to add all sorts of attachments to these to change the way they look. We could incorporate birds or bees, mailboxes, extra stones and extra steps, actual wood, extra wall texture segments, things that we can just add magnetically possibly to these to incorporate more designs from existing doors or bases. I hope to offer these on my Etsy shop, so if you want to hop over to my Etsy shop, it is in the link in the homepage of my here YouTube channel. Then you can see what kind of fairy accessories we offer at this time. We will offer these fairy doors in already created to perfection and hand detailed, or we will offer them in paintables as well in casted form. So make sure you stay tuned for more videos in this series. But without further ado, guys, let's get some Sculpey clay out and let's begin the sculpting process of this fairy door. Again, as a reminder, it starts off as a tooth fairy door, but at the halfway point we shift into a later session in time and I change it into just a general fairy door with more detail. So sit back and enjoy, guys, as we jump into this time lapse and just have fun creating our very first item in the fairy collection. Alright, everybody, so as we jump in here, I have 2 sheets of clay completely rolled out here, and we're just going to go ahead and just cut out the general shape of the door here. Now, this is on a piece of wood backer here. Now, I had ordered some plain door hangers, like doorknob hangers. They're just plain wood panels with a hook at the top. And my original intention was to have a fairy door that would hang on the doorknob. That way she could remove it anytime she wants to. Or if she lost a tooth, she could put it back on there at the time and so forth like that. So as we sculpt out the door there, I'm going to get a lot of that wood grain texture in there, and we'll redefine that as we go through the process. We're going to go ahead and build a stoop as well as some little steps. My daughter actually cut these out. Very fun. But we're building up layers of clay on top of this piece of wood. And this is just the first half of this design session here. So we're just kind of building up the general shape there. And I actually used it just as plain clay as my daughter lost teeth. And the tooth fairy did come visit maybe 2 or 3 times while it was in this state. And we hadn't at that time painted it yet. It was still kind of just raw clay, and it was I was kind of getting a feel for how I wanted to finish it off. And it really didn't fit around the doorknob the way that I had intended. I thought it would be just like an easy thing. It would hang straight, but because the weight wasn't perfectly distributed, it just didn't work out the way that I had originally intended. We're going to go ahead and add a few little pebbles up and around the outside of the wood door here. I was originally thinking about adding like an acorn, like a centerpiece on the pebbles and things like that. I decided to remove this later because it just felt kind of out of place, and I decided to make it like a more formal type of roof on the top that kind of overhangs over the actual door itself. So that little acorn does kind of get wiped out there. And then I go ahead and remove a few of those pebbles, and we're going to go ahead and build up some texture here. And then we're going to go ahead and attach on top of this texture some more clay. So as you can see, it's got some aluminum foil there. That's just to keep the clay from kind of like adhering to that wood panel, little piece of wood. And when we go up the length of the item here, you're going to see that I will curve the clay around the doorknob hook at the top of this piece of wood. And although I had good intentions with it, it makes it so much more stout, and it's hard to get it around the door. It's the doorknob. It's tough. It's because I made it so thick and so heavy, and you can't bend it anymore once you get all that clay added on. It caused some cracking around like the gooseneck where it's going up and over, and we're just gonna have to switch things up again here in the second portion of the video, where we kind of like remedy that by just creating just a more uniform door in itself. We'll go ahead and build up the roof here. Now, originally, in my mind's eye, I'm thinking like a mushroom roof, but I really wasn't happy with how it was turning out, honestly. I do give it like kind of like a lip divot that goes all the way around the upper portion of the roof there, and then I kind of give it some striations. Now the under portion of the roof has a lot of amazing great detail. It's really cool. I was really quite happy with how it turned out overall. And you can kind of see it's not perfectly symmetrical. That's not the look that I'm going for here. But I do build up some textures, kind of like ribbing texture, like going from the base of the roof up to the top peak of it. And then of course I go over it with a little bit of rubbing alcohol just to kind of smooth it out a little bit. And it's okay. It's all right. It's not really like it's not sparking my like oh, this is amazing type of sculpture at that point. But I went ahead and let it rest, and we'll see how it turns out as I went through the process here. I'll finish putting the little pebbles up and then underneath the roof panel there, and I decided to use some little vines here to apply like kind of like door hinges to the fairy door itself. Now you can kind of see that little doorknob there. My daughter sculpted that from scratch. She just out of the blue, she's like, "Hey, Dad, I sculpted this. This is the doorknob." Okay, cool. It looks like a little like seed pod or something like that. And I put a little piece of armature wire there, and I kind of just put it onto the door. And during the actual casting process, before I started when I was making the mold and the cast of the item here, it did not survive the casting process. So we'll kind of make that independently every time I create the door or something like that. So we'll have to remake the little handle, but she did a great job, and I'm really proud of her. So here it is, talking about that gooseneck at the top, apart from just the vines that we kind of place just strategically around the bottom of the actual door there. I'm going to blend this in. Now this is where like the actual door hanging part would come into play. So I'm just following the existing curvature of the door hanger that's below. And I'm just going to go ahead and apply just a general hook fashion here. And then this would be where like a flower would be or something like that. I decided to go with more of just I was thinking like a hardwood type of texture that would be kind of coming down to the roof. And then I made like little like indentions to where she could put like particular like fake flowers in the sides and around the top. And it actually really worked out pretty cool. I used some little armature wire curvature pieces to hold these into place, and it was really cool and a little bit vibrant, and it was definitely pretty unique. Just kind of detailing things here and there throughout the process here. I decided to cut out a center window in the door. Of course, when I went into the casting process and the mold making process, I did fill this in with just a round piece of clay, and then the customer gets to choose whether or not they would actually like to Dremel that out or not. It's up to their individual like needs and things like that. But I do have a casted to where this can be cut out if they want to do that. Making just a little circular there that's going to kind of go around the surrounding piece of window there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make like just like a cross window frame here. And this is just rolled out pieces of clay that have a lot of texture on them, and it makes it look like there's little branches that are just laid over the window of the door. We're also going to sculpt a little flower here. Now the little flower originally was going to be kind of designed to go on the front of the little fairy door here, the tooth fairy door, and this would be like the simulated mailbox of the item. This is where my daughter would put her teeth in the little flower, and of course I guess the tooth fairy just swings by and grabs the tooth and puts in the money there. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of intricate. It's very interesting that that fairies are attracted to little beautiful sculpted flowers like this. Very simplistic, but it definitely met the needs, and I think the fairies were very happy with it. So here's kind of like the final result of the original like sculpted piece here. You can kind of see that it is at this point is ready to be baked, and it's not completely adhered to the board itself, but at some point I do get to that. I do apply a layer of E6000 and adhere this to the actual door hanging board, and then later on down the road I do separate those out. I have to use an X-Acto knife and a razor blade to separate those out. And then, of course, we are in the second design session. So my daughter used it as it was for a while. The gooseneck started to kind of fracture and crack. And then we decided just to go ahead and switch things up. I decided to go towards, instead of like the hanging method around the doorknob, where the weight wasn't distributed properly and it kind of hung sideways, or just it wasn't very cohesive. It was a good thought, but it just didn't work out. So in this situation, what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and extend the door out a little bit and make it a little bit more built out, and with a little bit more details here and there, and then it can be probably command strip into place, so it can be held into place by command strips, or even maybe I can put like a hanging hardware at the top that can be hung from something if I choose to. So I'll let the customers who order this as a casted item decide how they would like to attach it to the actual material that they're using at the time, whether it be a door or a wall or a Barbie castle or anything else. So I'm just using some clay here, and I'm extending out the walls here. Now, of course we have the pebble base that goes around the entire arch of the doorway. I want to make sure that we can kind of get some rock texture that's even, if not part of the pebbles, like all the way around a little bit. I want to make sure that these are kind of more flush, kind of like mortar texture, but still like have definite shape. And these are going to go around just the outside edges of where the wall would be that the door is set into. I'm also nitpicking over this little base here. This will be the stoop of the door here, and I decided to go ahead and extend this out quite a bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to add in one or two more steps here, and then the steps would be kind of surrounded in like a grass texture. I guess if I do only paint, it will just be like a green paint texture with some dry brushing. But if I decided to do like a flocking, like a fine flocking or something like that, then this would definitely be like a thick, bushy grass type of look. And these little stone steps will be kind of visible through that. Just detailing that in there a little bit, trying to make sure that I have a lot of texture in the grass foliage or grass clumps as it goes like across the front of the item there. And I'm also trying to be very mindful about the direction of the grass. Like the grass tufts have to be facing in the right direction. If I want to have like one grass tuft cascading over another, I want to make sure that I have the directions right for those little tufts of grass. Because when I go in and detail paint those later, we'll definitely make sure that we include a lot of that shadow and the detail in there before we go into any kind of like lighter colors. And it's just going to allow us to have a little bit of an easier painting process. So I'm using a little like a popsicle stick there. I'm using the tools here, whether it be a flat blade tool or an X-Acto knife, and I'm pulling that clay down over the popsicle stick in, and that's going to give me grass tufts. applying a little bit of lines there between some of that mortar texture, so that it just looks a little bit different than the pebbles that are going around the outside edges of the door there. But I want to make sure that they blend in pretty well. So we're just going to go ahead and give them a little bit of detail there. So I'm using just a aluminum foil a lot of times here to kind of give it a lot of like rocky texture. But sometimes I'll just use this like little flat blade tool here just to kind of chisel away or push it in particular ways to give it kind of rock texture. I'm also trying to be mindful about how the grass tufts on the front, as well as any kind of rock formations, is covering the original door. So I need to make sure that it looks like the door can be pulled open. If there's too much stuff in front of the door, then has the door ever been open? It doesn't make any sense for that to be just too much grass there, or the stepping stones to be too high. So I want to make sure that as I do this or push in on this bottom piece, I want to make sure it doesn't kind of just portray that the item is never used or the door has never been opened. I don't want that. I don't want it to look like the grass and stuff is so overgrown that it's never been used. So I'm building up the clay around the bottom, particularly around the edges, where I think that I might add accessories later, or even just like I get to the point where I'm just adding extra clay around the steps or around the door frame or off the sides where it's kind of hanging. So I want to just be very detailed about some of those tufts of grass as I introduce more. Removing some of that those vines there that were in the original cast or sculpting bake. I want to remove those and apply new ones. So you'll see me pop those off with an X-Acto knife ever so often, so that way I can come back and apply new vines and new flowers and leaves and things like that. As you can see here, I am working on the roof as well. I just felt like it wasn't bulky enough and it wasn't as symmetrical as it could have been. and that's what I'm doing here. So I'm putting another layer of clay on here, and I'm just gonna be very selective about how I like push that into the upper portion of the roof. And I'm also going to blend this down into the existing kind of mushroom texture that I have on the bottom of the roof, which I absolutely love. I think it turned out great. And this is going to be just kind of that rolled over edge. Alright, so with the bottom portion of the roof kind of done, I need to focus on the very top. And this is the portion that would maybe have potentially something added on to it, like a hook or maybe some hanging hardware. So I just want to make sure there's just a nice cohesive piece that anybody can attach any kind of hardware onto. And I want it to be very smooth as far as the roof. It doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical, but I want it to be very nice and I want it to look like it's one piece and not like a bunch of layered pieces all together. So I went ahead and put one more piece on here, and we don't have to worry about the back because that's going to be the side that's going to be kind of glued down for the mold making process. Because I do plan to mass produce these, and you'll be able to get these off of Etsy as a paintable or already painted, fully detailed on your, ready to go. And so what I'm doing here is I'm just nitpicking over some of the shapes and kind of the size of the crown of the roof. And here in a few moments, I'll begin the process of adding polka dots to the roof as well, just to give it some more like different patterns and different textures. I'm really trying to make sure that I can smooth out this top portion of the roof here. So I decided to go ahead and add a little bit more here, a little bit more meat to the very front of it here. And as I pat that down, it's just going to apply a little bit more smoothness to it. And because this entire layer right here is all one thickness that I used out of the lasagna press, it makes it look a lot smoother. It doesn't have as many like upward striations towards the crown of the roof as the original version of it did. But it also looks a little bit more symmetrical than the original did as well. So although it's less organic, I'm able to lock in a lot more details around the bottom. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to like create like an upper indented lip on this, and then I'll use a ball stylus tool to kind of create even more texture right there around the rolled up edge of the mushroom roof. And then we're going to come in with some of those polka dots there. Just using my fingers here to create some of those indentions. Sometimes just your hands are the best tools that you have at your arsenal, and that's what we're going to use here. Applying a little bit more meat to those exterior walls there, I decided to bring those up in detail and thickness just a little bit, just so it looks like they're kind of blended in with those pebbles at least just a little bit. But these do look like larger pieces. I'm also not I'm making sure that I blend the seams between a lot of these like larger stones, because I am trying to think about the casting process. I want my casts to be very detailed, and if you create a lot of voids in little nooks and crannies, it makes it very difficult for not just the molding process to take those details on, but also long term that the casts will wear out the silicone mold even faster. So you kind of got to find that perfect balance between a lot of detail, but you gotta also make sure that you're thinking about how the mold is going to react when you're using it long term. I'm pretty happy with how that kind of looks. We're going to flip it over again here, and we're going to add just a little bit of striations here, just little scratch marks here. A lot of these will not survive the overall final like sculpting and processing, but it's just kind of cool just to give it some little minute details here. So this is the process that now we're going to begin to implement some of those polka dots here. Now I'm going to use a wide range of polka dots, and all I'm doing is rolling out a little roll of clay. All I'm going to do here is I'm just going to use a little ball of clay that I'm going to roll out. I'm going to push it down with the palm of my hand, and then whatever size I get is the size of the polka dot. If I don't like the size, then I'll just simply redo the process. And then that just gives me a wide variety of random assortments of polka dots. Now those polka dots could be glitterified, or they could be painted in metallics or different shades and different colors. And of course, as this overall Fairy Garden series advances, I may paint the same door in different formats in different ways in the future. So you may see it reappear. I don't know how my daughter is going to want to paint hers yet, but she'll be able to paint it however she wants. Of course, I'm going to lock in some of the details around the door, around the vines, and the rock formation. When it comes down to like the polka dots on top of the roof, she's going to get to choose. Like, I'm not going to dictate that. She gets to choose how she wants it to look, and then she's going to have her very own painted version of this. But she does get the first casted version, of course, because the original clay model that I have here will go in my backstop for creating molds in the future. It's looking pretty good so far here. I'm liking the detail work, and I think it looks absolutely spectacular. Now, I did go over it with a little bit of rubbing alcohol, just be aware of that. And I also made sure that I kind of shaved that bottom kind of a base of the door off, so that way it can sit flush or sit vertical. I also went around the entire item and I filled in all of the little nitpicky nooks and crannies, so that way the mold making process was a little bit smoother. I did get a lot of like a little catching here and there, but overall I'm very impressed with it. There I am removing that little doorknob just because it's so tiny and it has such micro details. I didn't want it to get lost in in the mold making process, as well as I plan to leave that open so that I can incorporate more door handles to the same version via magnets later on in the process. As you can see here, we did incorporate a lot of grassy texture here around the base of the item. It also creates a lot of weight to it too, so if they decided just to kind of lean this up against an existing tree or dirt foundation, or if they want to incorporate this into their actual fairy garden collection with their own little moss textures and grasses, then they can do that. Using the handy dandy aluminum foil trick here, we're going to use this to create our rock and dirt textures. And then, of course, we're going to begin texturing the grass tufts in just a second. Creating a lot of texture around these edges here. Very important. And if some of that gets washed out along the way, that's just naturally going to happen, and I'm completely okay with that. We're trying to make sure we save the bottom of the item and make sure it stays flat and flush. And then we're going to start to go ahead and sculpt these little tufts of grass around the bottom edges here. Now, as you can see, I did sculpt a little bit on them, but I haven't actually defined them quite yet. And to do so, you can use a combination of X-Acto knives and little sculpting dental tools to create a lot of texture. As you can see here, we did jump in time frame here. Now there is the actual tufts of grass completely done. Don't worry guys, you're going to see tufts of grass being sculpted again in the very near future. And I will probably make a dedicated video specifically on these types of tufted grass. So you'll see that return in the near future. If you're watching this video later on, way down the road here, you'll be able to click the playlist and you'll be able to view that right this second. But of course, all things in good time. Using a little bit of rubbing alcohol there, it also takes away a little bit of those details. It also takes off any kind of loose pieces of straggly clay. But I'm also going to go ahead and smooth out particular areas here and there. And that also helps with the mold making process later on in later stages. I'm really digging how it's looking so far, you guys, and I think my daughter is absolutely in love with it and cannot wait to get some paints out and start working on this awesome fairy door. Let me know in the comments what you think, guys. Ooh, looky here. Now, how awesome did this thing turn out? Now, if you notice, this isn't the actual sculpted item we just made in this video. This is a smooth cast 320 casted design. Now, I offer this on my Etsy shop, and I mentioned that at the very beginning of this video that I may begin offering this on my Etsy shop, and indeed I do. I look forward to incorporating more of these designs on my Etsy shop, including more accessories to attach to them magnetically. That will be an ever-growing thing, so if you don't see what you want as accessories, request that item and I will focus on it in the weeks or months or years to come. This is going to be a full-fledged product line that I offer on my Etsy shop as we continue to grow in our art journey. But otherwise, guys, I really did like how it turned out as far as just all the detail work. The little circular mushroom shapes at the very top. We can even see the kind of the frilly look of the bottom of the mushroom. The wooden door, which also has a little natural bubble from the clay, which turned out great. We have a cutout here for a stained glass insert, and we left enough meat at the very top and the bottom for a possible battery pack for LEDs, including maybe LED like hanging lights on the front, or maybe a light that goes in the door itself. We have the stone steps as well as two grass patches on both sides to add mailboxes or little mice or ladybugs, things like that too. It has a kind of like a dirt base that goes around the very bottom of the item, and it's sanded smooth on the very bottom as well as the back with a sander so that you can have an ultra smooth surface to mount that to an item. I will offer this as a magnetic option or a just command strip option, so you can just attach it to anything you would like. And of course, this is completely customizable, so you can add more to it, paint it however you want, and just enjoy the crafting process on your own. Again, this is my own sculpted design, and I look forward for you to paint it here in the near future. So if you want to catch one of these, make sure you check it out on my Etsy shop or my Shopify, depending on where you're doing your shopping from. I will catch you guys in the next video of this fairy door process, and in that video we will be using Smooth On Moldstar 15 Slow to create a mold of this. Of course, that video and that process does not go as according to plan, but we are successful in creating a mold of this. Every once in a while, I have a brain fart moment and something just won't go right in the crafting process, and we have to work through it. You'll find that in that video, which I'll link in the end of this one. Also, make sure you like and subscribe as always, and I'll catch you on the next awesome video here from Byerly Studios. Later, guys.